All right, Shalom. First off, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakah HaKadosh, and double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. And first off, I want to say Shalom to the ones that push this word out in truth and in sincerity, which are the apostles and elders on down to the brothers. And Shalom to the ones that endure their faith until the very end, until the time of Jacob's troubles, which are again the apostles and elders on down to the brothers and a few sisters. All right, so Shalom. So I want to do this video on something I've been actually looking into. Now, what's funny is, things like this, they do actually teach some of this in school. I used to have a American government class and all that, US history, personal finance class, stuff like that. But, although I do pay attention to those things, because obviously, a lot of them children in them schools, man, most of them my age, but still, I call them children because that's what they act like. They children. Jake don't give a damn. But what makes it more fun to learn about these things is when you're in the truth, when you can actually use that to your advantage, right? When you're versatile with things, right? You take another weapon and you're able to use it to your own advantage, right? That's what pretty much had me decide, to look into this. This is what they call the U.S. GDP, right? GDP goes into gross domestic product, right? Now, when you go and look into gross domestic product, it's pretty much, the monetary value of, the country, right? The monetary value of the products that's being produced of the country, right? Things that's being made, goods and services, pretty much. That's what it is. The goods and services such as, foods, entertainment, anything like that, anything that's being produced out of the country. And what's the worst part about it is that most of the things that's being produced out of this country is literally from other countries, right? Like China. Most of the things, the products that you get, it says what? Made by China, right? Even the money is being printed from other places. So your goods and services is, first of all, not from here, but it's the fact that they even take credit for that. They shouldn't even have a GDP, right? The monetary value of the products being produced from the US. It's not being produced from the US. But besides that, pretty much, in fact, I already said this many times, monetary, it sounds like monitor, actually. It sounds like monitoring the products. In fact, let me look into that real quick. If my computer's still on. Monetary. I'll go into the etymology of monetary. Okay, here we go. The word monetary means, is actually, Latin. Okay, that makes sense. Latin for monitor, right? Or moneta, which it all really goes back to mammon, right? In fact, let me look further into this. Where does moneta come from? Right? Since it's Latin, most Latin words still come from something, right? Just like the medicines here. That's another product that's being produced by these other countries, but it's also being produced over here, yes, but most of their products are named after what? Something that's Greek or Roman. The word moneta is related to the Roman goddess Juno Moneta. Right. And this is why it's important, that we do these lessons in these videos, man, because every time we do these videos, man, we're learning. It goes back to the goddess Juno Moneta. It's named after a goddess, right? Which ultimately it goes to Mammon. But whenever you serving all these, it's not just the gods Mammon, Ishtar, Semiramis, the Queen of Heaven. When it comes to America, when you worship one god here, you're worshiping all of them. That's why it makes it worse, man, because you can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. That's why Matthew said you can't serve two masters. You can't serve, Yahweh by Shemel Shai, and then you can't serve Mammon at the same time. It's either you love one and you hate the other. right? So most of the things in this society is all named after what? Other gods, right? Now, when you go into the gross domestic product, which is again the monetary value of the products that's being, shipped out and sold, I looked up here, uh, the country that has the highest GDP, of course, the United States. Now, when you look at GDP, you can think of it as like a type of a form of credit. The higher the GDP is, the better. The lower it is, the worse. Now the U.S. got a high GDP. Well, not a. It used to have a higher GDP of 2.5, but right now it's at 2.3. And a higher GDP would be like at 4%. So the U.S. is at 2%, 2.3. Right? That's the average. Now the U.S. apparently has $30.5 trillion in gross domestic product, which is a lot because when you also look at gross domestic product, that's also the money that's being owed, right? Because when you go into monetary is, again, money. And when it comes to money, it even says things that's being owed, like a debt. So that shows the debt clock of this society. So this is Habakkuk 2 and 5. It says, yeah, also because he transgresseth, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. Right? So again, he's a proud man, neither keepeth at home. And that was one of his biggest mistakes, is not keeping where he built the society at. He goes around the entire earth conquering. But meanwhile he conquered, he still owes money to the investors. He still owes money to China. Right? That was one of y'all biggest mistakes. That's why the US debt clock is, at the way it is. That's why the whole monetary system is going to crash. It's a lot of financial talk in this video. So it says, who enlargeth his desire is hell, and it says death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Right? So when he gathered all nations and people, he has to pay them still. He has to pay, the other countries. Now, when you look at the country that has the most gross domestic product or GDP, the United States is number one, 30.5 trillion, and China is the second largest, which is at 19.23 trillion. And the third largest is Japan. And you know what country that has the most in this debt? California, which is where Los Angeles is, right? LA. That's where that Hollywood is at. Right? That's why most people they consider California as the best state of the US. That's why everybody goes there. That's why it's the biggest tourist attraction, in the entire US. Right? Now in this scripture it says, who enlargeth his desires hell, and it says death. That's also talking about, even financially. Not everything, in hell is always, being tortured, right? Which really this is torture. When you're talking about hell is a condition as well. And it's harsh conditions, and you can see now, especially in these times, a lot of people are struggling financially. This is a living hell. The things that you'd buy is barely, accessible. Right? And that's what you call the law of demand. Right? Now when you go into the law of demand, that's pretty much when if the price increase, the demand, which is the value or the amount of people that want it, decreases. Right? So when the price increases, nobody's going to want that product anymore. So what Esau is doing, he's pretty much breaking that law of demand. He's making it where the things that's highly demanded, which are the basic things that people need, the basic foods, the basic products, everything, he increases the prices on those So therefore, the demand will not decrease, but the price is still going to keep increasing. This man is making sure, that he run up that debt, but he doesn't know that he's losing, which is also why I'm hearing a lot of black women, as easy as they can get their careers and jobs as a nurse, they're also struggling. There's a lot of them that's struggling because a lot of them got their degrees within a couple months. But I'm also hearing that a lot of black women are also having issues now with doing the exact same thing. Why? Because Esau is trying to cut that now. Because too many nurses, right? A lot of them going into the nursing industry. Too many nurses. That means Esau, this man, he got to pay them. He got to pay them more money. And when he pays them more money, he's running up more of that debt. And you know exactly what time that this man ran up the most GDP, which was actually in World War II, which was about 40%. So I want to get in 25. It says, and through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Right? So when you're talking about through his policies, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. Right? Through his policies, he's causing many to be destroyed. This man has many policies like this. The GDP, that's a policy. Right? That's a policy and pretty much a form of a executive order. Right? Because when you're talking about, the value or even the credit of the U.S., everybody knows, even as a normal person, when you got bad credit, you can't pretty much do anything. So the fact that this country's credit is decreasing, they're trying to increase the law of demand. Right? Well, they're really trying to break the law of demand. So, and through that, he's using these policies, technology, the convenience. And that's why he's also, recently been banning vintage cars, right? Most of those have been banned. They're trying to go full on electric with a lot of things. Gas stoves, anything that's gas product, they're trying to ban and make it electric. And they're sure as hell making the electric stuff cost a lot, right? Now, when you buy it, it might not cost that much, but to keep it and to keep paying, pretty much the bills on it, it's going to cost a lot more. That's this man's trickery. And that's what's happening to the society. And that shows, man, the words of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, man, they're sharp. Right? Because this country is falling. This whole society and this hell is falling. Financially, mentally, spiritually, right? Everything about this place is collapsing. And most of all, what holds this society up is its money, its power structure. And its power structure is ran financially. That's how you run armies. That's how you run military. That's how you run, the people's minds with money. Why do you think in the dollar bill it says, "In God we trust"? Now, I was just thinking about this scripture, actually. This is Proverbs 23:5. It says, "Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle towards heaven." Right? So the riches that people make, this is why we say, man, don't trust in these type of riches. Right? We're not meant to be rich in this society. And we sure as hell don't want to. Right? It says, trust not, what does it say? Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? Meaning, will you set your eyes upon something that's fake? Right? A dream. That's why people who chase that American dream, it's not going to work. You can't chase an American dream in a society that's collapsing on itself. Right? Because the ones that run the society don't even have the American dream. Right? They're failing financially too. So what makes you think you're going to be successful or any more successful than them? right? Not only that, but the ones who got the money, these jakes that's in the entertainment industry, they sold out. They got bent over on the casting couch. First of all, man, they sold themselves, right? They wrote their names in blood. Not only that, but that money is funded. That money is loaned towards them. That money's not theirs. Because as soon as they break any type of contract, they either dead or they exposed for something. And then they take their money back. So what does it say right here? It says, for riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle towards heaven. Meaning that money is all going to go. Any type of money that you get is just going to go. The money that the Lord said, get your daily bread. That's, to hold you, to sustain you. Not to, go full on filthy lucre and search for money and getting rich and get rich quick schemes and stuff like that. Right? That's not what we're in this society to do. Especially if you're in the truth. So, okay, I want to get one of my favorite scriptures. This is Isaiah 14 and 11. It says, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Right? So thy pomp, the word pomp, we go into this a lot. We look this up. The word pomp means, the excellency or even a power structure. Right? So thy pomp is being brought down to the grave, which means death. And the worms is spread under thee represents, the decay of this society, as we see till this day. Right now, for years now, we've been in prophetic times, and it gets worse and worse. The mindsets of people gradually just gets worse. The financial stability is just collapsing like the Tower of Babel. Right? So it says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Now, when it's talking about Lucifer, son of the morning, this ain't talking about, Satan being kicked out of heaven and falling down to the ground, right? No, this is talking about, when you go into Lucifer, it means what? Light bearer or bearer of light, right? Son of the morning. Now, when you go into son of the morning, that's talking about the morning star, right? Which is, a star, light. That also precepts to Isaiah 13 and 10, right? Where it says, for the constellations thereof shall not give their light, and the moon shall not cause their light to shine. Right? When you're talking about that, that's always going to be talking about the power structure of the society. Always. So it says, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Yahweh. I will sit upon the mount of the congregations in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Right? So now this is also a precept to Obadiah verse 3, right? Where it said they dwell in the clefts of the rocks, whose habitation is high, and they set their nest among the stars. Right? And why do they set their nest among the stars with them space station, the towers? Right? Because they exalt themselves as the eagle. Right? Everything this man does, he's trying to be higher than the Most High. Right? Because the eagle got what? Keen eyesight. They see everything, and they got no known predators. And when you're setting yourself up there, you pretty much, that's a representation of them seeing everybody and controlling them. Meaning, I got power over you. You niggas are slaves under me. Right? And when they set their nest among the stars, again, the stars represents the power structure. But he's also doing that because, he's trying to be better than God himself. It says, what does it say right here? It says, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Now, this ain't talking about, the hell with Satan down there with a pitchfork waiting for him. Right? This is talking about to utter destruction. The destruction that's coming upon this place, that will be hell. Right? It already is hell here. right? But the destruction that's waiting upon for this man and his captivity, that's number one. His captivity is drawing nigh, and he knows it. That's why Revelation 12:12 is coming into play. And shit, that's why he's doing the things that he does financially to people, right? That's part of him, bringing hell and death upon people, because he know that he have but a short time. Why do you think, he alters mainly the law of demand? Why do you think he breaks the law of demand itself? Again, the price increase and the demand decreases. But he's making sure that most of the products that have a high demand stays at a high demand while increasing the prices. So therefore, the things that you need on a basic daily basis, you're always going to pay a higher amount. So by the Lord's will, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakah HaKadosh, and Shalom.